This is The Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to The Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, and I am angry. I mean, I'm really angry. This is how I sound when I'm really angry. And my friend said, you never sound angry when you're angry. You sound kind of happy. But no, I am angry. Why? The woke mob managed to mess with several things that I love in one thoughtless act of mob violence, cruelty. What are you talking about, Jason Jones? I'm talking about Gina Carano, actress, athlete. I guess today we're supposed to say actor, athlete, and probably the smartest living human being. And let me get to that. But now, what are you talking about, Jason? Let me tell you what I love. Some of the things that are part of my daily life that are the bright, shining parts of my day. Number one is Muay Thai kickboxing. Now, I know a lot of people don't know what that is, which is always shocking to me because I'm like, you know what tennis is, right? Well, Muay Thai is on the list of sports number one. Tennis is probably 23. Google Muay Thai kickboxing, just the best sport in the world, and I do it every day almost. Every day I can. 4, 5, 6 days a week. It's my hobby. And it's my favorite sport, and I love it. Well, Gina Carano is a champion kickboxer. Absolutely amazing. She was an amazing athlete. She is an amazing athlete. MMA fighter, Muay Thai kickboxer. Okay? So they canceled Gina for saying something that was true, and it was like Hannah Arendt haiku. So she says something that's true and beautiful, and she fits it into like Twitter. It was so true that, of course, the mob had to destroy her. And she is a kickboxer, and she is also on one of my favorite programs, The Mandalorian, something I love to watch with my children. And the best director that has participated in The Mandalorian is Taika Waititi. So my loves are Taika Waititi. Mandalorian is something I like. Muay Thai. And Hannah Arendt. And you're saying, what does this have to do with Hannah? I am telling you, and I'm about to read to you the quote from Gina. This is something that Hannah Arendt would have said. And I said on this podcast, the reason I got off Twitter, I'm gone, right? For those of you who don't know, I'm not on Twitter. I said on this podcast, it dawned on me that if Hannah Arendt, the great political philosopher of the 20th century, in my mind, one of the greatest, right? Not the greatest. A German, a Jew, said very courageous things, and the mob tried to destroy her. The woke of her time tried to destroy her. And I said, but now, of course, she's universally celebrated. I said to myself, if Hannah were to tweet what she wrote for The New Yorker, they would have kicked her off of Twitter. And by the way, there's a movie I'm about to tell you to watch that'll explain all this to you if you don't know. I assume you know. Right? You listen to the Jason Jones Show. You are an admirer of Hannah Arendt, I assume. But if not, you have to watch the 2013 movie Hannah Arendt. It'll give you a great introduction to her. Or the beautiful documentary, Viva Activa. Okay? Well, now I realize they would not have kicked her off of Twitter just then, if there was Twitter then. If she were to try to tweet from her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem Today, they would kick her off Twitter. If I were still on Twitter, I would just start quoting Hannah Arendt from that book. Now, maybe I didn't structure this introduction correctly. Let me read to you what Gina Carano, the actress from The Mandalorian, who is a Muay Thai kickboxer and MMA fighter and genius, said. And then I'm going to compare it to Hannah Arendt and explain to you how they, to me, insulted Hannah, brought Taika Waititi into this, because they got Gina kicked off of The Mandalorian, where they worked together, right? This is what she said. I'm looking for my glasses because I'm blind. I can't find them, so I'm going to squint. This is what she tweeted, which is true and beautiful. She said this, quote, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that. To get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? So what Gina Carano said, and this set off a firestorm, hashtag fire Gina Carano. What she was saying is what Hannah wrote about Eichmann, that he was an unexceptional nobody. Now, as a Christian personalist, I don't like calling anyone a nobody, metaphorically, but she was saying he was a nobody. She said he was utterly unexceptional. What was so shocking about the crimes committed by Eichmann and so many others in the Holocaust is that they were nobodies, small, thoughtless. They gave up the right to think, that abandoned their own personhood. She said beautifully that, as Plato and Socrates taught the West, that thought is that place in your mind where you have a conversation with yourself and you make choices. But they stopped having any kind of conversation and thoughtlessly responded. It was amazing that Gina said, even children ran out of the streets and attacked Jews. Because you have very young kids on Twitter tweeting, "Fire Gina Carano." I'm going to read it one more time, and I want you to tell me, is there any hint of anti-Semitism? All right? Here we go. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first had to make their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. So she got doxxed and destroyed for that, which is really haiku. It's like Eichmann in Jerusalem boiled down to a tweet. The banality of evil. That the crimes are committed by our neighbors, hating people because they have disagreements with them on whether Jesus is the Messiah or whether minimum wage should be $22. And what she's saying is, isn't it really the height of pride and arrogance to hate somebody because of their belief on the incarnation of Jesus Christ or what minimum wage should be? What border policy should be? Whether or not No, these are prudential decisions that I assume all of our neighbors, I really do assume all of my neighbors, regardless of what signs they have in their yard in October on even number years, wants what is best for the common good. That is my assumption, and I would be right 99.999% of the time. So Gina says something beautiful. She's destroyed by it. So this is a special podcast today. It's actually a movie. The idea behind today's show is there's an icy storm front coming in. And the whole country is about to be buried in ice and snow. And so I want you to watch movies. And what's interesting is in my list of movies you're about to hear in the show I did with Kristen Hawkins on her podcast, and we're going to put her podcast, I'm introducing her podcast on my platform. So you're going to hear Kristen interview me for her show on my show. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to be hearing that. And we talk about what movies activists should watch. So Kristen really wanted to talk about what movies pro-lifers should watch, and she wanted to talk about pro-life movies, and we do that. But then me, because I'm self-willed and hard-headed, I wanted to talk about the most beautiful movies that I want everyone to watch. And so we did that, too, at the end of the show. There were two movies I forgot to mention, which I'm going to mention in this introduction because they're the most important, that you need to watch tonight, okay? You need to watch tonight. So we talk about movies that everyone should watch, and you'll hear that in the interview, but I'm going to add two films to that. The first is from 2013. It's called Hannah Arendt. I think you can buy it on Amazon. It's for free on the Criterion channel with the Criterion collection, or you can get it at your library, I'm sure. It's probably not the easiest film to find, all right? You have to watch Hannah Arendt. And again, it's about this courageous woman, one of the most courageous women of the 20th century. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of the backstory. A little bit of gossip too, but I think the gossip's important. So Hannah Arendt was a student of Heidegger's and Karl Jasper's. And one of her classmates happened to be a young Leo Strauss who was also kind of had a crush on her. But she was having an affair as an 18-year-old with the man that the woke mob of the time said was the greatest philosopher. And I'm sure they would probably, a lot of the woke would still say this. I think he's a lunatic, but that's Heidegger, Martin Heidegger. The 18-year-old Hannah Arendt was having an affair with Martin Heidegger. Why am I telling you this? This young German girl who was Jewish, young German Jew, was having an affair with this professor Heidegger, who was considered the new Socrates, right? The greatest thinker since sliced bread, the guy. And he was married, da-da-da. Well, what does Heidegger do in 1933? You know, he joins the Nazi party. He doesn't want to drink hemlock. He's no Socrates at all. He conforms to the spirit of the age. He kneels before the altars of the gods of the city. He burns incense all day long to idols because he's a coward. You know, to be a great thinker, you have to be courageous. So who was really maybe the new Socrates in that classroom with Leo Strauss and Heidegger? It was Hannah Arendt, because she never, ever pushed the hemlock away. Give me the hemlock. She drank it. Okay, so listen, what do I mean by that? So this young girl, her professor, the most respected thinker in the world at the time, joins the Nazi party. She's Jewish. The Nazis hunt her. She gets caught by the Gestapo, gets away, sent to a concentration camp, escapes, makes it to Paris, then gets to the United States. Okay, she's a brilliant thinker. She has to go through all of this. Imagine 1933 to 1945. She escapes, but she's weathering this horrible storm now for what is it? 13 years, right? Now she's in the United States. She's becoming a renowned writer and thinker. Then the Eichmann trial, the Eichmann trial takes place, and they hold it in Jerusalem. And she goes to the New Yorker and she says, "I want to write about this." She writes about it. Eichmann in Jerusalem, and it becomes extremely controversial, right? Very controversial. She is accused of being a self-hating Jew. All sorts of horrible things are said about her, because what did she say? She said what Gina Carano said. Eichmann was a nobody. He was incredibly unexceptional. He just wanted to please his employers. That he really was not an anti-Semite. He didn't hold to Jew hatred. He had friends that were Jews, helped early in his life by family members who were Jewish in his career. He was thoughtless. She said that truth is too important to forget. And she said, I'm not forgiving him. This is not absolution. But it's important to know that nobodies can commit incredible crimes. That's what Gina Carano said. It was the nobodies running around, beating their neighbors, turning their backs when their homes were raided, pointing out the home where they suspected Jews were being hidden. The banality of evil. So the fact that the mob has turned on Gina Carano, to me, for saying something so simple and true, is going to be a turning point in the history of this country. I think the battle is on. We will win. They are pushing all the beautiful people. And I'm not talking about conservative, left, right, Christians, evangelicals, Protestants, Muslims. No. They're pushing all of the beautiful people into one side of them, right? If you're beautiful, if you're kind, if you're thoughtful, if you're gentle, if you're not willing to shun and dox and destroy, get over there. You're done. You're canceled. Pretty soon, they will have canceled every thoughtful, creative, beautiful person in the world. We'll all be on one side. And then there'll be the homogenized lunatics, the thoughtless, banal monsters, all on the other side. Now, by the way, all of us can be swept away by enthusiasms. And that's what the Jason Jones Show shirts that we haven't even started selling yet because it's cold. They're tank tops. We're waiting. And it says, our mission is to be in solidarity with the vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable. So in the back of the Jason Jones shirt, it says, be vulnerable. I founded this show to advance the interests of stateless, ethnic, and religious minorities, the vulnerable communities here in America, right? The child in the womb. I never thought I would have to defend superstar athlete actors from the culture of shunning. So that's something all of us need to be thoughtful of. We are never going to shun anyone. And then when someone's being shunned, we do not count the cost. We stand with them. It's like we don't count the cost to stand with the child in the womb. We don't count the cost to stand with the Uyghur. We don't count the cost to stand with a celebrity in Hollywood who's being shunned, or our neighbor who's being shunned, or a classmate. If we see somebody being shunned, that's our new best friend. All right, that's all. So that's my rant.